We're live, rather. All right, hopefully everything works out, because last time we had some connection issues. It looks like we're connected. All right. Welcome. All right. So today, we're looking ahead to the readings for next Sunday. Slight caveat with this is I was at a leadership conference Thursday through Saturday. I was pretty much completely out of it on Wednesday. Well, I wasn't out of it on Wednesday, but I was prepping for Bible study all day Wednesday. So Tuesday was my only day in the office last week, and that was, I don't even remember what happened on Tuesday. I was getting ready for Sunday for all the stuff that I wouldn't be here for. So I don't have a handout for this one, and didn't even do nearly enough prep. But I've only read through these texts, so many times over the last decade and 20 years, whatever. So we're going to look at these and discuss. So these are readings. Obviously, we're getting close to the end of the church year. Quickly approaching. I think we only got one Sunday after this. Actually, I think this is the day, the week before the last Sunday of the church year, because Advent starts early, I believe. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me quiet that one. So, as it is approaching the end of the church year, readings are going to be focused on the end times, things being brought to fulfillment, all that stuff. The fun thing that when I was going through this, we were looking at this text for planning the worship for next Sunday with Alex, and I'm reading this and I'm realizing, okay, so this is the Sunday after Election Day. So I'm reading these kind of with that in the back of my head. And it actually, honestly, I think the themes really work well for a post-election day thing, because, especially with Malachi, for behold, the day is coming burning like an oven when all the arrogant and all the evil doers will be stubble. What better post-election day message do you need than that? But honestly, it really does kind of work. The epistle reading is, it's not really connected because it's part of this. We're just reading through the epistles, so it doesn't really connect.
Oh, yes, it does. It's verse 2.
What's that?
That we may be delivered from wicked and evil men.
True, but verses 1 through 5 on that are in parentheses. Those were
Oh, bummer.
I know. We might get the whole thing. I don't know. So the idea was that the thrust of that text that they wanted to get across was verses 6 through 13. But we might have time to look at it too. It's interesting. But then the Luke text, the gospel text, is, they're speaking at the temple, house adorned with all these stones, and Jesus says, there will not be left here one stone that won't be thrown down. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, great earthquake, all this, like, hey, the end is coming, the great and terrible day of the Lord. So that is very much an end-of-the-year text. But, like I said, how I like where it connects with our current situation, well, certainly wars and nation against nation, got plenty of that. Brother against brother, well, we'll see what happens on Tuesday. God only knows. But the neat thing that I like about this is, we've got this election on Tuesday, and so help me God, we just need to get through this so I can stop hearing all the, what? I have a prediction. Things will get passed and people will get elected. People will be very unhappy. People will be very happy. Most of us will be like, can we just go back to work and get on with our lives?
No more text messages.
Oh gosh, yeah, the number of junk mail will go back down to normal. No more, but anyway, what I like about these texts is it really puts it all into perspective, because this is all that we've heard, all that I've heard, and I won't speak for you, but just, this, I love how every election, this is the most important election of your life. The future of life itself hangs in the balance. So you better, and it's not just vote. It's never go out there and vote. It's vote the way I think you should, because that's what matters. So, it's just being presented as this huge, everything's in the balance. Democracy in the balance. The life of this is in the balance. This is in the balance. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. And we're hoping that maybe if we just got all the right things in line, well, then we'll course correct, or we'll go here, or whatever, and things will be good and fine. And I love these sects because Jesus is kind of just shows up the Sunday after Election Day and says, and guess what? The world is still going to be coming into a fiery ball of destruction. Get ready.
This is kind of where we went on Wednesday night, like with what's on the other side of the whiteboard, how it all ends on the
Oh,
last
yeah.
day.
Oh, yeah. What she's talking about is Wednesday night we were talking about the Lutheran doctrine of the two kingdoms or two realms. Basically how Christian lives in two realms, basically the world, the civic realm, and the church or the spiritual realm. So, we exist in the civic realm in that we have governments over us to take care of us, to lead us in good ways. Problem is we have people in government. And anytime you have people involved, there's sin. And it's just... So, the institution of government, good. The people who fill that institution, sinners. But it doesn't change the fact that a Christian, Lutheran, whatever, has an obligation as part of living in that realm to play a part in that. So it is like, so be engaged. If you want to run for office, go for it. I wouldn't advise it just because why would you want to? But if that so burns in your heart, a Christian can do that. It's actually, and it gets even more fun where Luther will bring into this and advocate for Christian ideas in the civil realm. Because, and we talk at great lengths about how the American ideal is you have a separation. The church and the state exists, but there's a huge wall and never, no passage. Luther, he doesn't care about walls. He says, no, you know what? The government should actually, if it's a good government working well, it should actually help promote Christian values, which shocks everybody. But the idea is that is where we live in the world. Obviously, we live in the church, the spiritual realm. God is in control of both realms, but we live forgiven, filled with grace, mercy. We come here to be relieved of all of our sin, to be forgiven. Then we go out into the world to live and work and serve our neighbors, right? So the doctrine basically says, you can be a Christian out in the world. You should be a Christian out in the world. A lot of teaching is no, pull back from the world. Christians, the world, we're against the world. Scary stuff is out there. We should fear that and draw back and build a fortress around ourselves so we can protect our kids and beware everything out there. Luther says, no, God created that. God even created the government. God gave us all this stuff, and it's good. Now, what we've made of it, we can talk about that. But he says, no, go out there. Go out there and be a Christian in the world. Because they need that. The world is good. It's just broken. Just like, the church is good. But it's filled with what? Sinners. You're being led by one. You're gonna hear about my influence today in the sermon. It's gonna be fun. A lot of personal stories today. But yeah, so anytime people are involved, there's sin. And you can see it. Well, have you ever known a church that is either fallen apart or whatever because of who's in charge? Churches that have crumbled, churches that are caught in scandals. I mean, good Lord. I don't know that you can name one that's not. That's because people are involved. Doesn't mean the church is bad. So, doesn't mean that you have to leave church. In fact, it means you need to be more engaged, right? You need to be more in the Word. You need to be more pushing and teaching and bringing true good doctrine in, right? Same thing with the world. So yeah, we need to get into the world. We can't just retreat. There's people out there who need to hear the gospel. And total tangent, sorry. But it was from last Wednesday. As we were closing, I was thinking about stuff. I'm like, oh, this was such a good example, especially because I was watching the news at the gym, which is so much fun because my weariness with the news matches my weariness on the treadmill. I'm I'm just tired of this nonsense. But it was Kanye West, I think, was the thing where he said a lot of stupid stuff, just horrible stuff. And I'm like, oh God, why? why is this news? Why are we even caring about him? Get rid of him, whatever. But the thing that I was noticing was, okay, so, and what got me was people were like, okay, cancel him, whatever, and he needs to, pay for the things he said. Now, he said abhorrent things, terrible things, right? Very anti-Semitic things. Yes. Okay. And it's funny, no, it's not funny, but look at the way things are all crossed. Because we've got, we've got a certain, and they're mostly at the extremes. You've got an extreme on one end that really wants to make this a Christian government, and advocating for Christian, basically like a theocracy ruling over everything. That's where you get a confusion of these realms on one side. On the other side, you've got a moral situation, and the confession, absolution, forgiveness is being played out in the civil realm. With saying, no, we need to get rid of him. We need to bring him, make him understand that he's wrong, and he needs to pay for it, and he needs to be brought to, whatever. And see, I hear that, and I say, well, so he needs to confess his sin and be forgiven. It ain't going to happen out there. Where's it going to happen? Here, that's the church's realm, forgiveness of sins. So that's not a commentary on what's going on. It's just it's interesting how we see these things crossing over. And anytime somebody of prominence commits some, whatever transgression in the public realm, and they're like, well, they need to go on the apology tour. They need to admit that they did something wrong, and they need to make amends. They need to do this. And for a pastor, I look at that and say, well, okay, but I mean, what are we looking at? Are we looking at forgiveness? Are we trying to, is that what we're doing here? Okay, I mean, how the world should handle that kind of situation is okay, hate speech. Deal with it legally. I mean, seriously, if that's really what we're looking at, it's all right.
I'm sure it's being dealt with legally.
What's that?
I'm sure it's being dealt with.
well.
I am positive. There's a whole league out there to do
okay.
legally. Yes.
Okay, here's where Sean, the everlasting pessimist, comes into play. Where it's yes, I'm sure there is, but unfortunately there's also a lot of money involved. And people with money tend to get away with stuff and never really find true...
I don't know, the Anti-Defamation League is pretty strong, so I have faith in them.
I don't know. Well, it's all gonna, that whole situation is gonna...
What's ironic is that an African-American man is picking on another minority group. I absolutely, when I get that, or when my children have gotten that, there was a young boy who drew a swastika on my daughter's locker in high school. It was on the news.
Yeah.
And his mother called him out on that point. But so my kids have faced so much anti-Semitism in public schools.
If there is ever any evidence that this world is just circling,
That's it.
we have readings to that effect. and that's why I say these are great post-election readings, because however anybody in here feels Wednesday morning, whether you're elated, whether you're crushed, whether you're indifferent, that's not truth. Okay? This is truth. This is reality. This is what is actually going on. So, let's look at that. And let's see what God says about that. Because I think that's a little bit more pertinent. So, let's look at the gospel. Jump ahead to that one first. Since that's the most, I think, that's the most fun. So, whoever would like to read. Oh, it is long.
While some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, Jesus said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." And they asked him, "Teacher, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when these things are about to take place?" And he said, "See that you are not led astray. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and 'the time is at hand.' Do not go after them. And when you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified. For these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once." Then he said to them, Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and pestilences. And there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my name's sake. This will be your opportunity to bear witness. Settle it, therefore, in your minds, not to meditate beforehand how to answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be delivered up, even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends, and some of you they will put to death. You will be hated by all for my name's sake, but not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance you will gain your lives. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. Then let those who are in Judah flee to the mountains, and let those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are out of the country enter it. For these are days of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. Alas for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days. For there will be great distress upon the earth, and wrath against this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword, and be led captive among all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles, until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity, because of the roaring of the sea and the waves, people fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near.
Okay, so I think what you want to do
Here?
is circle verse 28.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Because that's going to be pretty much the key to all of this, and the point of all of this. Because, of course, the fun thing about this is when you've got people who will like look at a text like this and say, see, there's things happening. So they pull up a history book or pull up a newspaper and try to like draw lines and say, okay, this is happening, with some concept of either trying to pinpoint when Jesus will return or whatever, or like, okay, what he said. Don't do that. Because what we got going on is, so we've got, he's speaking, right? He's speaking at the temple. What's that?
I like that drawing.
This is one of my better ones.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good job.
It's not oh, you should have been here for Revelation. Oh boy.
I would have enjoyed that.
Well, the pictures were by far my finest work. So I've got, this is where Jesus is speaking. Okay, Luke 21. And this is before the cross. Okay? There's a lot of stuff he's talking about, and it's not exactly clear because it drifts in and out, and it kind of weaves where it's like you read some of this, and it's like, okay, he's talking about this in a way, because like when he says, and he doesn't say it here, but he does talk about the temple, how it's like, oh, tear down this temple and I will raise it in 3 days. Well, of course, he's talking about the cross. So there's points where he's kind of, you see it, it's like, okay, he's talking about the cross. We see this fulfilled there. Okay. Well, then there's also times where he's talking about, okay, well, now he's clearly talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. When Romans come in and, blow it all up. So he's definitely talking about that, and like unmistakably that, which helps us in terms of when he says things in other places where it's like, okay, there will be some alive on that day, that are alive today. And if it's weird because it sounds like he could be talking about this too, which is weird because then it's like, well, now we've got some kind of immortal-ish kind of people who are going to exist and see it all. That's not what he's talking about. But there's also stuff where he's talking about where it's like clearly this, which we get right at the end. They will see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with power and great glory. When does that happen? The very end, right? So that's definitely this. Okay, let's see. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, Clearly, Jerusalem was not surrounded by armies at the cross. Here they were. What was that, 70 AD?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, hang on, I'll write that. So, 70 AD. Don't know. 32-ish. 32-ish, in that range. Week before. That. Okay. So yeah, Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Clearly, he's talking about that. Then signs in sun and moon and stars, distress of nations, and perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. That's anytime, right? Is there any nations in perplexity right now? Spoiler alert, you live in one.
All of them.
Well, yeah. I tend to think we're more perplexed than most.
I don't know. Europe's gone mad right now.
It's all crazy. And verse 10, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Okay, well that has been happening, is going to happen. And the funny thing is how we used to calm we get, which I guess is I don't know. Like when Russia invaded Ukraine initially. I mean, I felt a little bit of it, although, it wasn't terribly like, oh, how could this happen? But what really got me was everybody shocked, like especially the news media, whatever, and the people who were saying, how could this happen in this day and age? I thought we were past all this. Like, why? Well, we're past this time of colonial expansion where countries invade. We don't do that anymore. It's like, well, they've been doing it for a long time. They haven't really stopped. We're kind of inoculated because no one wants to come invade us because it's too far to fly. Canada, what are they going to do? But seriously, we're very isolated from. We've got neighbors, but it's just too much. And the border, whatever. There, you've got whole groups of, and we have how many hundreds of years of history do we have? A
Not
few.
very much.
You've got people who are living such close proximity to each other with thousands of years of weird, angry, bloody history.
Mm-hmm.
You think they're not? Think of my house with 4 people who can't get along and want to invade each other's rooms. I had to pull Lily out of Aiden's room the other day. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just going in here. I'm like, that's not your room. So yeah, it's just like, and she just had this look like, oh, okay. So yeah, this is not a surprise. Earthquakes in various places, famines and pestilences. We're just getting out of a pestilence. Probably going to enjoy the next one. I don't know. This is all happening. They will lay their hands on you, persecute you, delivering you up to synagogues and prisons. Okay, well now to synagogues and prisons. Now he's talking mainly about like people in here, right? The first generation of the church. We don't. If we were really going to change this to our context, we'd have to change it from synagogues and mosques, I guess, and that would be in the Middle East, because that's where we see Christians being pulled into, and being persecuted like that. So he's definitely talking more about this period. So delivered up by even parents and brothers, relatives and friends. Some of you put to death. Well, okay. There's a lot of this going on all this time. So the trick with this text is not to try to pinpoint. And this is not in this text, but like when the abomination of desolation comes. So help me, Lord, the number of people who have spilled ink trying to figure out what the abomination of desolation is, what it means, when it comes, what do you do? Like, oh my gosh, missing the point. Because he's jumping just all over the place. Almost like maybe you're not supposed to pinpoint when this is happening. Maybe he's saying like, look, stuff here is going to be crazy. And you're going to be like, oh no, look at the horribleness. Like when they see Jesus crucified and they go into hiding. Even when Jesus rises from the dead and sends them out, they're going to see craziness and persecutions and death and destruction. Church, great. we're going to live in a time of wars and famines and destruction and people giving each other up and death and all this. Yes, this is happening all the time. So maybe he's saying, like, look, what you see, you're going to see the cross, you're going to be like, okay, yes, great, but we're still living in this time. You're going to see the church rise up. All right, you're still living in this time. We're going to see the church age. You're still living in this time. So then what's the point? Turn to verse 28. When these things begin to take place, as they're always taking place, so basically, not when you see these begin to take place, but hey, every day, when you wake up and you look, you turn on the news real quick and you're like, nope, turn it off, because I don't want to see that. Straighten up, raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. So, not only in that every day, every minute, pushes us closer to the time he returns. Yes, the day of redemption, or your redemption, is drawing near. We are closer now than we were 5 seconds ago. We're closer to the redemption, the last day redemption. But, so, you come and you receive. Your redemption is drawing near. You got the word. Your redemption draws near. Sit up. Pay attention. Listen. Pay attention not to this stuff, these things. Pay attention to these things. This is your redemption. Actually, fun thing, literally drawing near to you. This is a cool thing about communion, how, as we approach and, we give you the wafer. Your redemption, think about it today. Your redemption is drawing near to you, and you have it. So, think about, before you come up to communion, think about the election. Think about all the nonsense and all the chaos that could be. Okay? Put that in your head. This is the only time you'll ever hear me say that. And then, focus on when I come up and I say, the body of Christ is given for you. And look at that way, and see it. Redemption comes to you, and you take that redemption, and you say, oh, you don't say, but you eat it, you take it, you make it a part of you. It is inside you now. Your redemption is not only drawn near to you, but it is in you. Okay? You take the wine, you drink it, it is coursing through you. It is made a part of you. He's like, yeah, look at all this stuff. Crazy, right? But pay attention to what's important. Pay attention to your redemption that draws near. This is the hope you have. Not any of this stuff. Because you know what? We get all the right ballot measures approved on Tuesday. We get all the right people in office. You know what's going to happen? Nation will rise against nation. Kingdom against kingdom. Brother against brother. Father against children. All this stuff. It's still going to happen. Guaranteed. It's... whenever I hear the word progressive when it comes to politics or whatever, I always say that's I always think, like, you can't be a progressive and a Christian. Not in terms of your politics, not in terms of policies or whatever, but just this concept that we're progressing, we're getting better. Like, things, if we just do the right stuff, we'll get it right.
I see what you're saying.
And it's like, yeah, a Christian is more realistic about things. Like, you know what? We're pushing against. We're doing our best. We go out into the world to try to do our best, knowing that our best is not going to save the world. That's why it's like, I don't look at elections in terms of, like, I'm changing I'm going to be a... I mean, when I was in California, I was... My politics, definitely more conservative than California, right, as a whole. Technically, I guess I was a Democrat because I thought everybody was a Democrat. I thought this is what you had to be, because you're in California. But my ideas were more conservative. Well, granted, I had, several elections while I was there. It never mattered. Because I was voting the way I felt, God was like, this is according to Scripture. And, it never matched up with what the majority wanted. So I'm like, okay. Well, as much as I was pessimistic, and sometimes I did, truth be told, I didn't vote all the time because I was like, oh. Because it was like, it's not going to change anything. But understanding how it's like, no, I'm supposed to be engaged though. You know what? And that's the whole Christian thing is why do you spread the gospel? Why do you share Jesus with people? Why do you love people? Because God loved us. He tells us to, right? He doesn't say do it and the world will be a better place. In fact, he says love your enemies. I mean, he directs us to people that hate us. Pray for your enemies. So there's that. Then I go to Oklahoma, which swings completely the opposite direction. By this point, I'm like, I'm not affiliated with any political party whatsoever. I don't want your emails. I don't want your junk mail. But the fun thing was that even for us, that swing was now I'm like, wow, I really don't agree with you on a lot of topics. It's like, oh my gosh. And it was just like, wow. It was just such a weird polarization. And honestly, the way I would vote in some elections in Oklahoma, I was like, well, it doesn't matter. As blue a state as California was, red a state as Oklahoma was. And that's how I often looked at it. But nowadays, it's like, you know what? I look forward to voting. And I don't care really if my voice is heard, if the way I vote is going to win the day. Because even if what I want wins the day, people are still in charge of making it happen, and people are sinners, and people do the worst stuff possible. And there's so many unintended consequences to every good intention. I have many good intentions, and I end up having to apologize for about half of them. I've tried so hard in so many ways to be like, I'm doing a good thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I did not. It's like, okay, I'm not worried about the end result because that's the end result. Nation against nation, earthquakes, destruction, right? Well, my truth, though, is that even in the midst of these things, our redemption is drawing near. I have peace and comfort in that, not in an election. I mean, whatever happens Tuesday happens. This doesn't change. This keeps coming because there's always another election. I know not if you hear some people, but you know what? There's always another election. There's always another revolution. There's always another empire that falls and a new one that rises.
But that's pretty popular right now, are these last day people. I battle one on a continuous basis.
Wow.
I have a friend
Why?
because she's trying to convince me of the right way.
Oh, no,
Remember,
I know. Why would you battle that?
I'm only getting into first level heaven, according to her.
Mormon?
Level 1.
Is that a Mormon that you're dealing with?
No, she is.
Because they have different levels of heaven.
She's a self-proclaimed, I'm going to say that, Jew for Jesus.
I know, that's not the group. I know the group. Level.
Yeah, she's always bombarding me with videos and.
I did not know they were.
And they're very end times. I'm lucky. I'm not lucky, but I am a favorite target of the Messianic Jewish world.
Sure.
Run fast from them.
Oh yeah,
I am a Jewish girl who's now a Christian. I am not a Messianic Jew.
You're supposed to be though.
No, I know. That's what they tell me.
That's what they tell you.
Because, and they gave me a hard time about getting baptized. They gave me a hard time about everything.
Huh.
They come after me full steam ahead. But I always tell her when she's trying to tell me that this is a blueprint, and I always refer to Matthew 24. I'm like, through 26, I'm like, so if they say to you, look, he's over there, or,
right, yeah.
No, don't believe them.
Yeah.
Why do you believe in all this? You're just supposed to love your neighbor and love God. That's literally what you were commanded to do. You're not commanded to look at for all this.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
You're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Don't
worry about this.
These people are really on fire right now.
Yeah. This.
It's like living in tomorrow.
It's a horrible way to live.
You can't do it.
No,
it's
we're not supposed
crazy.
to.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, I don't know why there's such a focus. We focus on this, but only so much as we say,
We know it's
Amen, come, Lord Jesus.
Amen.
We look at the end and we say, yeah, bring it. So quickly.
Yeah, but my impression of reading, multiple times, not as much as many of you, because I don't have as many years in, but is that basically Jesus wants you to be doing your job well, as in being good to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Taking care of what you got to take care of, spreading the gospel in whatever way you do by good deeds or, your life.
Yes.
And that's how he wants to catch you, not studying for the signs of the Antichrist.
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah, that's why we get a lot of scripture which talks about like, yes, when you're I'm losing the scripture.
About what to do if I was left behind.
Anyway, I'll get the scripture to you later. But for those of you who go to Wednesday nights or watch Wednesday night, this week, but what we'll talk about is this idea of vocation. It's a Lutheran, it's a very Lutheran
love
doctrine.
vocation.
Yes.
That's like their favorite thing.
And that's basically what this comes down to is what we do while we live out this time. And basically this is where you are. Do what God has given you to do. If you are a grandparent, be a grandparent. If you are a spouse, be a spouse. Be a good Christian spouse. If you work at McDonald's, make some really good French fries. If you govern well, according to God's word. But and it's always attributed to Luther. Luther never wrote this, so basically anytime you read anything that says like, oh, Luther said this, don't believe it. Unless you actually get it from a book that says Luther's writings.
Right.
Because Luther apparently said a lot of stuff that, like, oh, Luther warned us about the internet. He probably did in some way, but, But anyway, he says something to the effect of, like, the Christian cobbler, that's one who makes shoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. This showed my age there. One of these little guys who doesn't know anything. A Christian cobbler does his job not by putting little crosses on shoes, but by making good shoes.
But that's basically his point, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is his point. I mean, it's not something he said,
Right.
but it's basically his teaching. But what he did say is basically so like the mother who feels like she needs to be doing more for God and needs to be like, because she's so she's busy with taking care of babies, by changing diapers, by doing this, and says like, I need to be doing more for God. Luther says, every time you change that child's diaper, that is serving God. You're serving this baby, and through serving this baby, you're serving God. So this is why like I don't like Christian movies, like explicitly Christian movies, because in my opinion, they're very shallow. They're very much do this and then kind of like, oh, my life's falling apart. If I just rededicate my life, if I just do the right prayers and I turn my life around, now my marriage is happier. Now I've got everything I need. Like, that's not a Christian message to me. That's a very works kind of like, oh, if I have enough faith, then things will be great and happy. It's like, no. So like I don't really go in for the like, we need to Christianize things by placing little Christian things on them. By, like sprinkling Christian seasoned salt on stuff. Like, no. How can you be a good Christian person? Love and serve your neighbor. So if you're, so when you go to Meijer today, and the person who's checking you out in the cash register, if they're a good Christian and doing a good Christian work, they just do their job well. You get to be a good customer. Don't be, be patient. I mean, I was going to say don't be impatient, but be patient. Be,
nice.
Accommodating. Yeah, nice. That's being a Christian. That's actually doing your vocation. It's all this. So what we do in this time, kind of coming back to like, know that your redemption is drawing near, because if you look, and that's what I love about this text, and I like that it's long because you've got all of this, which is like doom and gloom, right? All of this stuff that says, stuff's going to get crazy out there. Like if you look out in the world, you're going to see nonsense. It's going to be on fire and it's going to look scary. What's the gospel nugget you get? One verse of gospel nugget, right? I mean, there's some in here, but the main thrust of the gospel is one verse, your redemption is drawing near. Which I think is purposeful. Because, it just illustrates this whole, like, there's so much going on. And we get distracted and we focus and say, oh, look at this, an earthquake. It's like, just focus. Just look. This is what matters. This is what gets you through. This is what comes to you. And so just do this. Be surprised when this day comes. That's the best way to do it. Be shocked. Be like, already? No. I mean, granted, right now, I'm like, bring it. Like, when it comes, I almost feel like, really? It took this long? But yeah, when this day comes, be genuinely surprised. Like, wow, I thought things were going to get a lot worse. Oh, you came quick. Or just like, I didn't see that coming. Oh, wait, can you hold on a minute? I still got stuff to do. And then God will, usher you into the resurrection and be like, okay, good, continue. Because we'll have vocation in the resurrection. We'll be loving and serving one another. It's just without sin. It'll be great. So yeah, it's a really, really fun. I really think this was picked. Well, it wasn't picked out for election, but really works well. Boy, that's fast. Okay.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, comments about that?
It's very good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to fill out my ballot. Can't do that.
I know, I still have to vote. Totally illegally vote with my husband. Sit there together Googling stuff.
Oh, I was like, this is live. Don't say that.
No, that's all right. They're not gonna bust us for sitting together and voting at the table.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you all.
They
We'll
want to
end a little
be.
bit early, so looks like
My
we.
family first settled in North Dakota when they came from the Middle East because it was free land.